What's up, family? Get this video a big thumbs up if you get some value from this video. So I do want to preface the conversation first in regards to watching this video, and then we're going to talk about it. Okay, family? Check it out.
Well, look, I think it matters because it's another reminder that radical Democrat political activists abuse the criminal justice system in New York, all to create a political talking point. Look, Ellie is exactly right, our legal analyst here. This would have never been charged this way if it weren't Donald Trump and he weren't running for president. Should have never been charged this way. He should have never faced this. It was all done so they could call him a convicted felon during the campaign, which, of course, they succeeded at. What they miscalculated is that the American people knew from the get-go that it was partisan politics, and they soundly rejected this in November. So Trump's, I guess, going to get one more bite at the apple here to make the point that these Democrats in New York elected, Alvin Bragg elected, Marchand elected. These people are elected by the people, and they took their jobs in public service and used them for political ends instead of using all of their time to throw the bad people in New York, which there are plenty of them on the streets, in jail. That's the real lasting impact of this, the abuse of the system for political purposes when New York City is descending into a hellhole right now.
Well, there you have that, folks. Shout out to Scott Jennings. So Donald Trump convicted on 34 felony accounts, sentenced and back in the spotlight. But here's the twist. No jail time, no community service, and not even a fine. Just the title of convicted felon. What's really going on here? We're going to break it down and have a conversation. So first, let's recap, right? This case revolves around hush money payments during Trump's 2016 campaign. The Manhattan District Attorney charged Trump with 34 counts of falsifying business records, arguing that these payments violated election laws. But here's the kicker. No U.S. president has ever faced charges like this. Even legal analysts are raising eyebrows. And I want you guys to check out Elie Honig, who is the legal expert at CNN in regards to his take on things. So check it out, folks.
All right, Ellie. You and I predicted the idea there wasn't going to be much of a penalty, if any at all, but there's no jail time, no community service, no fines as we know it now, nothing. What do you think of this decision, given you didn't think the case should have been brought in the first place?
Well, it's an unsatisfying outcome, I think, for certainly the district attorney, but I think it points up ultimately that this was a case of prosecutorial overreach. I don't think there's any real way around that at this point. I think Alvin Bragg would defend this case by saying he looked carefully at the facts and the law, and he believed it was necessary to impose accountability. And I should say, as I always do, Alvin and I were former colleagues at the aforementioned Southern District of New York. He was a colleague and a friend. But I think the vast majority of the American public now views this case as I do, which is that it was a colossal, world historic episode of prosecutorial overreach. He took this case, which the feds had rejected, which the FEC had rejected, which his predecessor as DA had chosen not to charge and later said would have been a huge problem. He crafted a charge against Donald Trump that has never been brought against any other person in American history. He took an expired New York State misdemeanor, piled another expired New York State misdemeanor on top of it, and piled a federal election fraud violation in state court on top of that. Nobody's ever been charged or convicted that way before. And so now the ultimate result of this, Laura, legally is essentially a big fat zero. And politically, I think it backfired badly on Alvin Bragg and on Democrats.
Clearly, Bragg would disagree. And of course, the prosecutors who endeavored to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. But let's set aside for a moment the views you have on this issue and what the judge actually said. The judge didn't view it in this same way. The judge's rationale was looking essentially at the fact that this is a president-elect, but also obviously looking at the balance he'd have to strike between how to actually get accountability in the form of financial payment, one, or also to hold him accountable versus via jail time. His decision, as you know, Ellie, he considered the immunity argument and the DOJ's policy of not prosecuting a sitting president, but that the idea of trying to preserve the finality of it. That statement, I think people are kind of scratching their heads about. What does he mean to preserve the finality of it, given that there'll be appeals and there are ongoing appeals here?
Yeah, so one thing Judge Marchand said in his opinion, which I think is spot on, is nobody really knows. We've never been in this situation before with somebody weeks away from becoming president, and can that person be sentenced. And I think in light of that, Judge Merchan reached a reasonable outcome, which is let's try to move this thing as far along as we can. And in fact, by actually sentencing Donald Trump next week, assuming it goes off as planned, that actually will enable Donald Trump's legal team, if they so choose, to pursue an appeal, to appeal on the exact basis that I just laid out. You can't charge someone with a federal campaign violation in state court. And I think they have a pretty decent chance of winning. So by getting Donald Trump sentenced, what you do is put that chapter of this case behind us and allow Donald Trump, he's really doing Trump's team a favor in a sense of saying, if you do want to pursue your constitutional appeal while you're president, you can go ahead and do it now.
Well, that's the idea. Preserving finality is a bit of an exercise in futility if you have appeal still pending. It's you're trying to move it along to get to that next stage of things. Look, he has told Trump, you can either show up in person or virtually. Now, you and I both know that means that there's no chance, as he's indicated, which is odd in and of itself, that he's not going to step him back. He's going to give show his hand early on. But the idea of holding it even remotely, that strikes me as particularly odd to give the choice, even knowing that he's not going to step him back.
Yeah, it is very, very rare for a judge to impose sentencing in any case when the person's not physically there in front of them. In fact, most of the rules and laws say the person has to be physically present, unless, as you note, Laura, in rare instances where the judge does not intend to impose prison time. I actually think this was a pretty smart accommodation by Judge Merchan, because Trump's main complaint here is you can't take me as president-elect days away from taking office in the midst of transition and impose the burden of me having to come in and be sentenced. And so Judge Merchan has said essentially, fine, you want to do it by Zoom, we can do it by Zoom. And so I think he sort of undermined Donald Trump's ability to go to the federal courts and say, hey, federal courts, you have to block this sentencing from going forward because it's too much of a burden on me. Hard to make that argument when you can just zoom in for it.
And remember, he had to be in the courtroom because of a criminal matter. He did not have to be there when it came to the E. Jean Carroll civil matter. Instead, Ellie, we'll see what the jurors think about this sort of.
Well, family, this case is unprecedented. The charges are legal gymnastics to me. Stretching the law is never used before in a situation, as you heard Ellie say, Mr. Honig. So from the start, this case was as much about politics as it was about the law, right? And just to add a little bit more context, we have these liberals, deranged liberals, there's a couple of them, one or two, who basically are so gung-ho on Trump. Trump is not going to jail, but since he's not going to jail, which they really want him to do, oh, he's still a convicted felon. So I want you guys to check this out in regards to this panel.
Is this a kind of Goldilocks decision by the judge here to give people who want Trump to have consequences a conviction that is upheld, but not have to deal with, a sentence, which frankly was unlikely to actually happen given that he's about to be the president of the United States?
No, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. I think this is a slap in the face to the judicial system. We tell the jurors when they come into that room that your job is very important. This is very serious. We expect them to pour through the information, which they did. They came back with a decision, and now the judge is saying, essentially, it doesn't matter.
Now, let's talk about the sentencing, since he mentioned it, right? The judge handed down nothing. No jail time, no fine, just the conviction itself. Why so lenient? A lot of legal experts argue that this was a strategic move, balancing the law and politics. However, only this jurisdiction in particular, New York, which has crime running rampant more than ever, instead of focusing on crime like they should be, they're so gun-ho on working with the extreme leftish, the Democratic Party, to stop Donald Trump. And I feel like this is their only way. And they're basically chewing on straws to try to get this thing to occur so they can say he's just a convicted felon. Now, don't get me wrong. For Donald Trump's standpoint, it's a win that he don't face jail time. But however, who wants to have convicted felon on their record, right? And most likely, I believe this whole thing will be overturned. But let's continue with these deranged individuals.
You found him guilty, but I'm not going to assess any penalty at all. I'm not saying you had to put Trump in jail. That's not likely or reasonable. But there are fines that could have happened, up to $170,000 in fines. Why not assess that and say, you were found guilty, here's a consequence, so America can know that if you do something wrong, there will be a penalty to.
Well, Trump is very wealthy. We know he's rich. $170,000 is nothing. It won't really be seen as a punishment, as we know that, because at the end of the day, he's wealthy, right?
Brian?
Listen, I think what we're going to learn through this case more than anything else is the most helpful to President Trump's election. Because when you saw the indictment take place, you saw a lot of money come in. You saw the party consolidate against around President Trump, and that was a good thing. And remember, the original purpose of what at least Trump world felt that this was happening was to try to damage President Trump in his presidential run. Hopefully, this will take him off the sideline.
Right.
Democrats were all over the country saying, if you look at the polls, he's going to lose this much Republican support if we can just get this conviction, and it backfired on him. So I'm not surprised when we get to the very end that it just turned out to be a farce it's a farce at the end, just like it was a farce from the very beginning.
It was a witch. It was a witch hunt from the very
to
beginning.
Dante's point, there was a jury trial. And
Yeah.
he was convicted.
But he was convicted in what really was a witch trial. I mean, the whole thing from the very beginning was.
This is my take on it. They wanted to convict Trump in a court of public opinion. First, just to obviously stop him from running for president, but also to tarnish his name and convict him in a court of popular opinion or public opinion, so individuals can look at Trump as bad man Trump that they keep pushing. The obsession that they had over painting Trump as a bad man, obviously the establishment, which is the Democratic Party, are the very individuals they obsess over accusing Trump for, which I find very just wild to me. But we all know Trump leveraged all his opportunities, still resonating with the people, using TikTok to his best ability, connecting with the people, and that's why the American people voted the way they did, right? But we all know at the end of the day, and the question I had was, why they keep going at this man so hard, right? They had all these years to come at him and accuse him of what they wanted to accuse him for. And think about it, the expenses, right? He wrote down his lawyer fees as expenses, which he has the right to write down as an expense, Donald Trump. And his accountant had basically publicly corroborated within all matters when it comes to his monies and stuff like that, right? And testify willingly. So it's just wild to me. Let's continue.
Politically motivated. And like you said, I mean, during the election, we saw how the American public felt about it. They felt that it didn't matter. And my question is, why even have him appear if the judge has already made a decision that there isn't going to be any kind of fine, there's not going to be a probation, there's not going to be any jail time? What's the point?
He said he can appear virtually,
Right,
which again,
right.
you're giving that concession. I understand it's the incoming president of the United States, but I don't want the point to be lost that there was a jury trial where that jury sit through and heard evidence, and whether or not Trump should have been charged, that's not what we're talking about. He was, and he was found guilty based on the evidence. So you can't ignore that and say it was a political witch hunt because a jury said he did something wrong, but now the judge is saying he won't be punished.
The judge, I mean, he is not saying that the jury's verdict is invalid. He's just saying, of the options I have available to me, I'm going to choose the one that has basically no penalty. Isn't that an option?
This woman, man. Abby Phillips, bro, sometimes, I don't know if you dumb as a doorknob or what. This case should have never gone to trial, period, in my opinion. As you can see, this is the divide as deep as ever. For some, this is justice, and for others, it's politically motivated attack, which in my opinion it is. Look, individuals can't even substantiate their point because it's really no punishment in itself. It's just a reputation punish. It's just a tactic to basically harm someone's reputation so they have it on their record as a current reminder of, oh, we still got you. Because to be honest, nobody's really substantiating a point of why Trump deserved this in the first place, right?
Would have been available to him anyway?
No, I mean, I don't know of an option where someone is convicted of 34 felonies and at the end of it, you say, okay, all right, we got you, but there's nothing that's going to happen to you as a result. That's just not how our legal system works, and we don't want people to think it works that way.
First-time offender, no priors?
For all of the talk of Donald Trump being the victim of the weaponization of our criminal legal system, he has consistently been treated more generously than the average American would.
Bro, what? Hold up, brother. Hold up, bro. Hold up. We gonna run out. I know this boy ain't just say what I think he just said.
Weaponization of our criminal legal system. He has consistently been treated more generously than the average American would. To the point just made, who do you know who's been convicted on 34 felony counts, doesn't even have to pay a fine?
Bruh. What? Been more generous to Donald Trump? Bro, they've been trying to get this man. The Democratic Party is the ones that have been weaponizing the Department of Justice to come at Donald Trump in every angle. And then the truth prevails and he wins, just like with that Fannie Willis down in Georgia. Fannie Willis, why is she meeting with the Vice President Kamala Harris down in Washington? Oh, the election interference thing she tried to accuse him for, that got thrown out. And the simple fact that we ain't even going to talk about Joe Biden stealing classified documents and using it for his book. Come on, man. And how lenient the Department of Justice was on his son, Hunter Biden. And we all know that Joe Biden said he wasn't going to pardon his son and then turned around and said he is going to pardon his son. And then the man didn't even see a day and didn't even go face any type of Department of Justice system. Before the trial, before everything even took place, my man got pardoned. And, because Joe Biden is old and senile, even though he took classified documents from the White House and tried to write his book or whatever the case may be, he don't get punished. Yeah, okay.
To say nothing of some prison time.
Well, who
That
else
is an
would have ever been charged in the circumstances?
But white collar,
Nobody
but this is
else.
how we treat white collar criminals in our country. They walk away scot-free. This has been traditional. This isn't any surprise to us.
Well, they don't. After they've been convicted, they don't walk away scot-free. They have to have some. There has to be some consequence, whether it is a financial or some combination of.
But it's
of
consistently smaller
financial
than any other type of criminal.
or some prison time. And so here's a classic example. And by the way, this has been appealed on at least one occasion. I mean, he was convicted of things that a court has found beyond this trial court to be a perfectly valid thing to be convicted of in the state of New York. And so for all this talk about a witch hunt, weaponization, no one can plausibly dispute that he committed the crimes that he was convicted of. They may not like that he was prosecuted, but the fact is, he did the things that he was convicted of.
Steve Chung is saying
in the Democratic, he wouldn't have got convicted in any other city that is a Republican city or even slightly leading moderate city. It is a jury of Democrats.
But Brian, doesn't it undermine your very point? If you're suggesting,
and it's the only jurisdiction of New York. New York, the only thing that's consumed. We ain't even gonna talk about Letitia James, Attorney General down in New York, man.
that Republicans would have let him off, isn't that in itself political?
Defense counsel.
It's very, very political. But that's my point is Trump has broken all these barriers and he continues to do it. But now the Democrats try to do it with the weaponization of our judicial system and it just backfired.
My question is, why not just take the win? There's no consequences to this. Just take the win and move on.
Yeah, that's that dumb as a doorknob statements. I can't deal, yo. Why don't he just take the win and just get it? Be a convicted felon and just get on his record and take the win. Ain't no win. Women, how about you? You take the win. You take that when you know you didn't deserve it, and it's it's a political driven motive behind this to get persecuted in the first place.
Trump's team is saying there should be no sentencing. President Trump will continue to fight against these hoaxes until they're all dead. But at the end of the day, to Mondare's point, Trump is coming out on the upside of this in the sense that there are no consequences here.
Except that he still is a criminal.
Let it go?
Because he wants to erase the criminal from his record.
What about the other three jurisdictions in which he was indicted, right? The dozens of other felony counts for withholding, refusing to produce classified documents that he stole from the Oval Office.
Right, but they dropped those. Those were
January
dismissed.
6th, those were voluntarily dismissed after he won the election, and it became clear that pursuant to a DOJ...
You see how they moved the goalposts? Oh, they were dismissed. That's the fact. So why mention something that you can't even substantiate your argument or your stance because it was dismissed? So you can't use that as a form of details to even substantiate your point, bro. Oh, it's where he won an election. Bro, it don't matter. It dismissed, bro. It dismissed.
A memorandum, which has never really been tested in the court of law, that he wouldn't be able to be prosecuted.
What frustrates me is, this is what frustrates me. Look, how can I say this? Any other jurisdiction outside of Manhattan, they're not saying that to say, well, every other jurisdiction is rigged in favor of Trump. No, what people are saying is that this specific jurisdiction case, these specific charges are only happening due to the fact that you have these Democrats that have campaigned on going out to Trump, right? They essentially looked into Trump to find a crime. That's why that's what they did, and then went after him, okay? And in another place in this country, for the most part, that's not happening. It would not happen. It would have not happened, and there's no consequences to this just to take the win. And I don't understand how this man right here, this whatever his name is, former Jones, former congressman, he's talking about these classified documents. But first of all, that was dismissed. But the point is, I'm saying, if you want to be so gung-ho on classified documents, let's talk about Joe Biden. Hold yourself to the fire. Hold Joe Biden to the fire with what he did in regards of those documents that he took and was found, right? You know what I'm saying? But let's continue.
Anyway, because he was about to return to the White House.
I think it's better.
That is not to say that those felony indictments were somehow without a basis. And throughout all of these prosecutions, no one has plausibly refuted the fact that he didn't commit the crimes that he has been indicted for.
But I think it's
these
better
are Republican talking points.
that those cases, we don't know if he committed those crimes or not, because they're not going to trial.
And he's
Actually, in
innocent.
this case,
And
we
he's
know he
innocent until
committed the
proven
crime.
guilty, by the way.
To be
Now,
clear, we actually do
have
know he did the
finality.
thing on January 6th.
Well,
I lived through that. We all
until
saw
he's
that play
found
out.
guilty, we can't say that. But here, he
We
was
saw him
found
refuse
guilty.
to produce classified documents that he took from the Oval Office. I'm just saying, some of this stuff has been in plain
a
sight.
jury found him guilty on this case, and there will be no penalty. I think that that's a slap in the face of the judge.
Bruh. That is not how that works, okay? That's not how it works at all. Look. When you have a trial, okay, you have to give the defense an opportunity to dispute the accusations. The fact that there is not going to be a trial, that doesn't mean that you get to say, well, I think he was guilty. And the only reason he wasn't found guilty is because the charges were dismissed because he's becoming president. That's not how that works at all, okay? The defense did not get an opportunity to prove that Trump is innocent, okay? So at the end of the day, there's no point even bringing that up. And we don't know either whether or not Trump has been found innocent or guilty, and he didn't even get an opportunity to defend himself. So I'm saying these people, you can tell how pissed off they are, and they're mad and upset because they feel like Trump is getting away. But, hey, ultimately, at the end of the day, these cases were fraudulent. And they should have been brought in the first place. So ultimately, the universe is just rectifying what something that should have never happened in the first place. Public talking points that those cases, we don't know if he committed those crimes or not because they're not going to trial. This case, we know clear, like we actually do know he did not do these things. And they can try to bring up January 6th. We all know they were FBI informants dressed up as MAGA individuals. They wasn't even real supporters. And the individuals that were out there peacefully that had nothing to do with the whole thing end up getting wrongly prosecuted. And it's just wild to me. So I'm going to leave it right there, folks. Let me know what you guys think about the whole thing. Peace.